And we are back. Welcome to my preview and predictions for Game Week 9 of the Premier League. Yes, we're already a quarter of the way through the Premier League season. But before we get into this video, I just want to say another massive thank you for all the unbelievable support you guys have given the channel over the course of the last few days in what has been another major European week on the channel. The most views, most new subscribers, most interactions, most likes, most comments, yet again for a European week. So a massive thank you for all of you that got involved over the course of the last few days. And obviously those Champions League predictions went absolutely incredibly. So I'll take a little pat on the back for that. Sadly, the 2 Europa videos didn't quite go as well in terms of my predictions, but as always, the previews are what we're here for, and the predictions are just for a little bit of fun. Before we get into this video, though, again, as always, if you haven't done so already, please do consider dropping a like on this video, sharing it with a friend. Subscribe to the channel if you're new around here with notifications turned on, because even though there is no European football next week, we are still posting some videos. We're doing the EFL Cup, Carabao Cup, whatever you want to call it. The next round of that tournament is next week here in England, so I will be posting my previews and predictions for the next round of that on Monday morning. And that means that if you head over to the community page in about, I don't know, 2-3 hours time, all of my community polls will be up for those matches as well. And if you do want to gain access to Ligue 1, Bundesliga and Serie A, you can click the join button on your screen to become a member of the channel, which will gain you access to those previews and predictions for those 3 other leagues, just like all of these people have done this week. So a massive thank you to all of the new members as well. Not only did we smash all of our other records for the European interactions this week with our best ever week for new members, so congratulations to you guys. You now have access to all of my thoughts on the top 5 major leagues in Europe this season. Click the join button yourselves to head over to that community page so you can see all of my thoughts on all of those matches. As for today, though, we of course still have 10 matches in the Premier League, and a big warning for fantasy football fans right now. There is a game tonight, so a reminder that you have just 8 hours to make your changes to your fantasy football team before the cut-off for tonight's match. And that match tonight is between Leeds United and West Ham, which is a huge match in the early race for survival in the Premier League so far this season. It really hasn't been a great month for either of these sides. Leeds are 3 without a win, losing their last 2. West Ham are 5 without a win, losing 4 of their last 5 and losing their last 2 as well, including on Monday night when they lost 2-0 at home to Brentford. And because that game was on Monday night and this game is tonight, there's not much of a turnaround for Nuno and his side either. So early indication would suggest Leeds will be considered the favourites for this match. In terms of the team news, Noah Okafor remains a doubt after he missed Leeds' defeat to Burnley last time out. For West Ham, no fresh concerns in terms of personnel, but Fulkrug remains out, which means Nuno still really is trying to figure out what he needs to do in terms of the striker position. He played Paqueta up there last week. That didn't work. Will Bowen go back up there? Will Callum Wilson be tried up front? It's a little bit of a mess in terms of West Ham right now, and they're really not scoring goals. When these sides met in the Premier League last time out, it was, of course, 3 years ago, so you can't read too much into it, but it was a 2-2 draw here. To be fair, I don't think there is a clear favourite in this match, but purely based on how Leeds have performed so far at home this season, I am going to give Leeds the benefit of the doubt and give them the win in tonight's match. And I'm going for a 2-0 victory to Leeds United. I just don't know where the next goal is going to come from for West Ham at this point in time. On to Saturday then, and sadly we have no early kickoff on Saturday, which means we're jumping straight to 3 o'clock. And it's a big game, in theory, in the race for Europe, because we've got Chelsea in 5th, taking on Sunderland in 7th. Chelsea now on a 4-game winning streak after a 3-0 win away to Nottingham Forest last weekend, and backing that up with a 5-1 victory over Ajax in the Champions League in midweek. And it should be noted that Chelsea did rotate the vast majority of their lineup in that 5-1 win on over Ajax as well. So it's a good spot they're in right now. For Sunderland, they got yet another win at home, beating bottom club Wolves 2-0. However, they haven't been as good away from home so far this season, so it is a tough ask for them to go to Stamford Bridge and get a result here. In terms of the teams for Chelsea, Malo Gusto remains a doubt for them after missing the game in midweek, and Maresca has confirmed that Liam Delap is close to a return, but it is unexpected he will make it back for this one. In terms of Sunderland, they actually have no fresh concerns, and they also have Reinildo back from suspension after a long time out after his red card a few weeks back. But I think it's going to be very hard for him to get back into a team, and certainly a defence that's performed very, very well without him so far. It'll be interesting to see what Lebris does with that situation. I don't think this is an absolute guaranteed win for Chelsea, but recent form would suggest they should be considered the strong favourites for this one. Sunderland, though, have been very good so far this season, and Chelsea have looked a little dodgy at home outside of that victory over Ajax in midweek. I'm still backing Chelsea to get the result here, though, and I'm going for a 2-1 victory to the Blues. Next up, our only other 3 o'clock game sees Newcastle taking on Fulham. Two sides who, in theory, really aren't on form, certainly in the Premier League as things stand. For Newcastle, they lost away to Brighton last time out, but they did bounce back with a very impressive 3-0 win in the Champions League over Benfica. For Fulham, they've lost their last 3 games in a row. In the last time out, it was a 1-0 home defeat to Arsenal. So they're 14th and 15th for a reason. Let's see which side is going to come out on top in this one. In terms of the team news here, no fresh concerns for Newcastle, but given how some of the rotated players performed in Europe, and certainly looking at someone like Harvey Barnes, there may be some changes from their Premier League lineup coming into this one as those Champions League players get the opportunity in the Premier League. For Fulham, not a good week for them. In that defeat to Manchester City, in that defeat to Arsenal, they did lose both Tom Kearney and Joachim Andersen, who are both expected to miss this game now as well. Personally, that's the final nail in the coffin in terms of this fixture, and I do think that Newcastle will be the side that comes out on top here. Should be noted that Fulham did win both fixtures last season, including a 2-1 victory here at St James's Park, but I think it'd be a real shock if that happened this time around. I'm going for a 2-0 victory to Newcastle. On to the first of 2 late kickoffs on Saturday then, and we have Manchester United taking on Brighton. 2 more teams separated by just 1 place in the Premier League table right now. In terms of Manchester United, they got that incredible win at Anfield. Get in there. Again, apologies for not having a post-match reaction to that match. And again, unfortunately, there's going to be no post-match reaction to this one either, because I'm actually out with some friends this weekend. I know, shock, football YouTube nerd actually has a social life. But there will be no post-match reaction to this one. But Manchester United did, of course, beat Liverpool at Anfield last week, meaning for the first time ever under Ruben Amorim, it's back-to-back wins in the Premier League for Manchester United. Brighton, on the other hand, though, they beat Newcastle at home last week, meaning that they have now gone 5 games unbeaten, which is a really good run for them, and they are just 1 place and 1 point behind Manchester United coming in to this game to Old Trafford. In terms of the team news, no fresh concerns for Manchester United. However, I would expect there to be a couple of changes to the starting lineup. I think Sesko probably goes back up front. I think we could see Mazraoui come back into the team for the first time in a little while. For Brighton, no fresh concerns, but Kara Mitoma and Veltman remain out, and obviously informed Danny Welbeck will be looking to haunt his former club, Manchester United, once again. I say that because Welbeck has been on the score sheet a couple of times as Brighton have won their last 3 visits to Old Trafford in the Premier League, including a 3-1 victory in both of the last 2 years. So as much as I would love to sit here as a Manchester United fan and say we're going to carry on that momentum after the victory at Anfield and get the victory here, there is absolutely no guarantee whatsoever that that is going to be the case. Brighton are on a very good run of form. They have a very good record at Old Trafford. But I am a Manchester United fan, and these predictions are just for fun, and I'm going to get a little bit carried away, and I'm going to go 2-1 to Manchester United. But I think we are going to be the favourites. I think after the performance last week, we should be considered the favourites. I just think it's going to be a very tough one to call. I'm going for Manchester United, but massive pinch of salt. Brighton have a very good record on this ground. And then finally, in terms of Saturday, we have an 8 o'clock kickoff rather than a lunchtime kickoff. We have Brentford taking on Liverpool. For Brentford, another good performance for them. Saw them see off West Ham United on Monday night 2-0. For Liverpool, their run of 4 consecutive defeats, including that 2-1 defeat at home to Manchester United, finally came to an end with a very impressive 5-1 victory away to Eintracht Frankfurt on Wednesday night. Interestingly, in terms of that match, they played 2 up front. They dropped Mohamed Salah, and look how much better they played without him. The problem is, that game did come at a couple of big costs. Firstly, Jeremy Frimpong went off, and secondly, Alexander Isak went off injured. 2 of their new signings taking the fall in that victory in midweek, which means team news is a little bit interesting in terms of Liverpool now. Will Salah now get his place back? Is that a good thing for Liverpool? Should they stick with the shape that they played? Should they try some other people? Do they play Gakpo, Chiesa and Ekitike and still stick with Wirtz on the right? Who knows? We shall see. But I do think that is a good momentum builder for Liverpool coming into this one. No fresh concerns for Brentford out of their victory at West Ham. I do think this is going to be a very, very close game, especially considering how poor Liverpool have been in the Premier League over the last few weeks. However, it should be noted that the last 5 games against Brentford have all been won by Liverpool. And I do expect that run to continue here. Again, I think it's going to be close, but I'm going to go for a 2-1 victory to the defending champions. On to Sunday then, and we have 4 2 o'clock kickoffs on Sunday. And the first of those that we are going to go for alphabetically is AFC Bournemouth taking on Nottingham Forest. High-flying Bournemouth, now up to 3rd, taking on very much free-falling Nottingham Forest, certainly in the Premier League. For Bournemouth, they made it an incredible 6 games unbeaten with that 3-3 draw away at Crystal Palace last time out. For Forest, it's 3 consecutive defeats in the Premier League. However, in his first game in charge last night, Sean Dyche went into Europe and he beat Porto 2-0. Granted, it was with 2 penalties, but you still got to earn those penalties. And they were back to their defensive solidarity that we saw from Nottingham Forest so many times last season. Immediately, Sean Dyche coming in and doing the job that he is expected to do. In terms of the team news coming into this one, Evan Nilsson is out for Bournemouth, but young striker Krupi certainly stepped up to the mark last week and will be hoping to do the same here again. For Nottingham Forest, Alexander Zinchenko had to go off with an injury just before half-time last night. He didn't even make it to the half-time whistle. He actually went off in stoppage time at the end of the first half, but he is the only concern for Forest as things stand. Naturally, you would have to go with Bournemouth as the favourites for this match, considering how poor Forest have been over the course of the last couple of months, but it's not out of the question that they could come here and get that clean sheet. The problem is, though, they did lose here 5-0 last season under Nuno when they were on that run of really good defensive performances. And with the way that Bournemouth have been playing, I do think they are going to still come out on top here. I'm going to go for 3-1 to Bournemouth, but like I say, watch this space. Sean Dyche has already done a phenomenal job in his first game. Can he back it up with this one against Bournemouth? Now we move to the current league leaders, and it is a massive game at the top of the table as Arsenal take on Crystal Palace. Arsenal, who have now won their last 7 matches in a row in all competitions after beating Fulham away 1-0 last weekend, and then backing it up with that unbelievable performance in the 4-0 win over Atletico Madrid in the Champions League in midweek. For Crystal Palace, it's been a really bad week for them. After losing their unbeaten streak, they then drew at home 3-3 to Bournemouth, and they backed it up with an absolute shock defeat last night to AEK Larnaca of Cyprus in the Europa Conference League. And what's even worse in terms of that result is, barring a couple of changes, they basically played their full first team in that match. So really not a good look for Palace coming into what is a very, very difficult game for them. In terms of the team news for this one, Arsenal are expected to bring Calafiori back into the starting lineup, and thankfully for them, no fresh injury concerns or suspension concerns coming out of the games against Fulham and Atletico Madrid, respectively. For Crystal Palace, equally no concerns coming out of their 2 matches this week, other than the state of their performances in those 2 matches. It should be noted that Palace did manage a 2-2 draw here last season, which did put a major dent in Arsenal's title charge last time around. However, prior to that 2-2 draw, Arsenal had won the previous 6 meetings between these 2 sides. As I said before the Atletico Madrid game, I just don't really see who is going to break down Arsenal at the moment. And after Palace failed to score against a Cypriot side, should I say, last night, I think now travelling to the Emirates is a massive, massive ask for them to get anything from this match. I'm once again going for an Arsenal victory. I'm going for 2-0 to Arsenal. Then the other massive game at the top of the Premier League table. I say at the top because Manchester City are in second, but also because of the form that Aston Villa are in. We see Aston Villa hosting Manchester City. For Villa, it was a 5-game winning streak for them before they also suffered a shock defeat in Europe last night, going down to Go Ahead Eagles in the Netherlands last night. Although, it should be noted, they did change the vast majority of their starting lineup for that match, and the regular first team players are expected to be fit and available for this one. For Manchester City, they're unbeaten in their last 9, and they have won 7 of those 9, making it 3 wins in a row without without conceding in their last 3 matches, which does, of course, include victory in the Premier League last week and then their victory away to Villarreal last time out. Can they make it 2 away wins against Villas in the space of a week? We are about to see. In terms of the team news, the likes of Cherki and Marmoush are now back and available for selection for Manchester City. However, Nico Gonzalez is the latest of their midfielders to pick up an injury. No fresh concerns for Aston Villa out of last night's game. As we've just said, they did rotate their only first-team players that are out at the moment. I think the only one is now Yuri Tielemans, who is not expected to be back for this match. Should be noted that the last 2 meetings between these sides on this ground have been won by Aston Villa. In fact, the last 5 meetings between these 2 sides have been won by the side playing at home. So it's certainly not out of the question that Villa can get the result here, especially given how well they've been over the last few weeks. If I had to pick a favourite, though, I would go for Manchester City. They are playing some very, very good football again at the moment. So given the fact that that is all coming together, I'm just going to go straight down the middle and go for a 1-1 draw. I've not gone for a draw yet in this video. I think this is probably the most likely, but if I was to pick a favourite, I would go for Manchester City. Penultimate game of the weekend then, and our final 2 o'clock kickoff is another massive fixture, but for all of the wrong reasons in terms of these 2 clubs, as Wolves host Burnley in that early race for relegation once again here. Wolves still rock bottom and still winless in the Premier League after a 2-0 defeat to Sunderland in the Premier League last time out. They must now look to bounce back against another one of the promoted sides in Burnley this week, who themselves beat the final promoted side in Leeds United last week, also by a scoreline of 2-0. In terms of the team news here, there are no fresh concerns for Wolves, but for Burnley, they're set to be without Jakob Bruun-Larsen, who's the latest player to be added to Burnley's ever-growing injury list over the course of the start of this season. For Wolves, it should be noted that they do have a decent record against Burnley, winning the last 2 games at home. However, again, it is a couple of years since the last time these 2 sides met. What also should be noted is that only 2 of the last 12 meetings between these 2 sides have been decided by more than 1 goal. So it's always very, very close between these 2. And given how poor both have been at the start of this season, I expect this one to be very close as well. Honestly, I could definitely see this one ending up in a 0-0 draw, but I hate going for 0-0 draws, especially when I do think there is a slight favourite for one side or the other. In my opinion, that slight favourite is Wolves, who I do think are starting to produce better performances, especially at home. I think they're due their first win of the season, and I'm backing them to get it here, but I'm just going to go for a very narrow 1-0 win to Wolves. And then finally, the main event of the weekend, the 4:30 game, sees Everton hosting Tottenham Hotspur at the Hill Dickinson Stadium. Both sides coming into this on actually pretty poor form. Everton only having 1 win in 5, losing 2-0 to Manchester City last week. Spurs also with only 1 win in 5, losing at home to Aston Villa last week in the Premier League and backing it up with an absolutely miserable 0-0 draw away to Monaco in midweek, where if Minamino knew how to score a goal, they probably would have lost 2 or 3-0 to the French side in midweek. A very, very damaging performance yet again for Thomas Frank's side. In terms of the team news, Jackie Grealish is of course back for Everton. He couldn't play last week against Manchester City because you cannot play against your parent clubs when you are on loan. For Spurs, a really bad week for injuries for them once again. Christian Romero, Matthias Tell and Destiny Udogie have all picked up injuries over the course of the last week, and all are expected to miss this game, along with all of their other long list of injuries as things stand. To be honest, I think this makes Everton the strong favourites for this match. I really do. Although it should be noted that Spurs did beat Everton 4-0 last season at home. They did lose the final game at Goodison though, 3-2 Everton, the victory in that one. As things stand, Everton are yet to witness a defeat at the Hill Dickinson Stadium, and I don't think that result is going to come this weekend. I think Everton take this, and I'm going for a 2-1 victory to Everton. All in all, a very, very, very tough week to call in the Premier League. A lot of sides that are close to each other in the league playing each other once again this weekend. And I do think plenty could happen. Before I leave you, let's have a look at what you guys have been saying on the community page for these fixtures. And you have gone for the following. Most think that Leeds are going to beat West Ham, but not as many as you'd probably expect. Basically, everyone thinks Chelsea are going to beat Sunderland. I think that is a dangerous prediction as well. Most think Newcastle are going to beat Fulham. Pretty split between United and Brighton. 49% for United, 30% going for the away win. Most of you think that Liverpool are going to beat Brentford. Most of you think Bournemouth are going to beat Forest. Near enough everyone thinks Arsenal are going to beat Palace, but 15% have gone for the draw. Most think Manchester City are going to get the win away to Villa. Very close between Wolves and Burnley. Actually, the majority going for the draw between Wolves and Burnley, which I think is absolutely valid. As I said, 0-0 very likely there as well. And then finally, most of you agreeing with me that Everton are going to get the win over Tottenham in the final game of the weekend. As always, a massive thank you for all of you for watching. I'm going to put my predictions back on the screen for you right now. As always, let me know down in the comment section below everything you think is going to happen this week. Don't forget to head over to the community page to check out the League Cup prediction polls that will be posted very, very shortly. All that is left to say is a final thank you very much for watching once again, and I'll see you next week.